Think wildfires are only a concern for those of us who live in rural areas? Well, I'm afraid it is time to think again. That's because when a wildfire like this one develops, tiny embers, just like these, can get pushed really far by the wind. They're as hot as the flames that spark them, and firefighters say in the right conditions, those little embers can travel up to 5 miles away from where the fire is actually burning. For a little perspective, that's roughly the distance between Daniels Parkway and Alico Road on Interstate 75. So when a wildfire does break out, count on our team at NBC2 to tell you not only where the fire is burning, but where the wind is pushing the flames, smoke, and embers. Local in Estero tonight, meteorologist Rob Duns, NBC2. Something that often surprises people about hurricane preparedness in Florida is just how different the hurricane evacuation zones are between all of the counties here in Florida. For instance, in Collier County, every single resident who lives in the county is in an evacuation zone. But in neighboring Broward County, there's no need for permanent evacuation zones to the west of US 1. That is a gigantic difference between two counties that share a border. Why is there so much difference between these two counties? Well, a big reason deals with what the earth looks like underneath the surface of the water using something called a bathymetry map. On this map, very deep water is indicated by dark purple. So off the southwest Florida coast, look how far you have to travel before you find yourself in deep water. And compare that with how deep the water gets just offshore of the coastal areas of, say, Broward County and Miami-Dade County. Now, we could show this to you using maps all day long. But because this is NBC2 and we always think outside of the box here, let me get my selfie stick. Thank you very much. And let's take a field trip together down to the beach and see how this all works out for ourselves. Okay, so that is the Gulf of Mexico, and we are standing on Naples Beach as some of our neighbors continue their recovery efforts from the storm surge event that happened here last year during Hurricane Ian. Now, as we stand here off the coast of Naples, if we were to drain all of the water out of the Gulf of Mexico behind me, we would find that the earth would look something similar to this. Do you see how there's a very slow and gradual drop down to what would be deep water off the coast of Naples? This is referring to something called the continental shelf. And when you have a continental shelf that is shaped like what we have off of our coastline with a very slow and gradual drop down to deep water, there's no natural protection or natural buffer against storm surge when a hurricane is nearby, preventing water from coming on shore. Think of it this way. It'd be a lot easier for you to walk up a very slow and gradual hill as compared to climbing a mountain, right? Well, water works in a pretty similar way. So when the continental shelf is shaped like this, like it is off the coast of Collier County, evacuation zones have to go very far inland because storm surge can go very far inland. Here's the thing. The shape of the earth underneath the Gulf of Mexico looks very different as compared to the shape of the Atlantic Ocean in areas as close to us as on the other side of South Florida off the coast of Broward County. To show this to you, let's take a drive over to Fort Lauderdale. So now we're standing right up against the Atlantic Ocean. And if we manage to drain all of the water out of the Atlantic, we would find the earth here looks a bit like this. Do you see how the shape of the continental shelf looks much, much different off the coast of Fort Lauderdale as compared to Naples? Here, there's a very deep and steep continental shelf, and that's why Broward County doesn't have a need for giant evacuation zones. This steep and deep continental shelf is able to hold back at least some of the water. So storm surge in this part of Broward County can't go nearly as far inland and typically won't be quite as deep as what's possible off of our coastline in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's all because of what the shape of the earth looks like underneath the surface of the water. Reporting on the road from Fort Lauderdale Beach, I'm First Alert meteorologist Rob Duns, NBC2. Though storm surge and wind cause most of the damage when a hurricane makes landfall, another threat you can't ignore when a storm is on the move is the risk of spin-up tornadoes. This was a big issue last year before Hurricane Ian made landfall, as multiple tornado warnings were issued along Alligator Alley at the same time many people were on the road evacuating toward the East Coast. Tornadoes are caused by something called wind shear. That's the change of wind direction or speed as you get higher and higher in the atmosphere. A way to picture this, though, is to visualize the 41 bridge through downtown Fort Myers. The cars on the bridge can move much more efficiently and much faster than the cars below us on the street below. The wind is something very similar when a tornado forms. When you have faster moving wind in the upper parts of Earth's atmosphere, it starts to make a horizontal rotating column of air. That horizontal column of air becomes a vertical column of air when it's caught up in a developing thunderstorm, becoming a tornado. Hurricanes generate their own wind shear as soon as they start moving on land. When a storm is over the water, there's less friction between the hurricane and the surface than when the system begins moving on land. The drag and resistance it meets when making landfall slows down the wind in the lower part of the storm, while the upper level winds keep up their speed. But not every part of a hurricane forms tornadoes equally. You have to look for a specific part of the storm called the dirty side of the hurricane. To find it, look at the storm from above. Note the direction it's moving and draw a plus sign. It's here in the right front quadrant where tornadoes are most likely. This part of the storm tends to have the worst winds with a hurricane, and because it's often what comes ashore first, that's where you'd find the most internal wind shear capable of spinning up tornadoes. Hurricane Ivan in 2004 caused the most number of tornadoes by one tropical system. Of the 120 that it spawned across the United States, 18 happened right here in the state of Florida. Reporting local in downtown Fort Myers in Centennial Park, I'm First Alert meteorologist Rob Duns, NBC2.